Hi, I'm Laura. Welcome to the Laura and Lowell Show.
And I'm Lowell. And this is our guest, Andre.
How you doing?
We are going to be talking about food today. Food in New York. We're in New York. We're in Riverdale, New York. Let's start with a little story. Most of you have heard the story of the French Revolution, where the courtiers come to the Queen of France. What was her name?
Marie Antoinette.
Marie Antoinette, and said, "Your Majesty, the people have no bread." And she says, "Let them eat cake." Most of us have learned that in the wrong way, that she was being a snotty and obnoxious 1%er who couldn't care about the 99%ers. The reality is she was a good person from the Habsburg house from Austria who married the French king. She didn't mean any harm. She simply had no idea what was going on outside her fantasy world, and she sincerely meant, well, if they have no bagels, why don't they have bialys? If they have no bread, let them eat cake. Andre and Laura are going to be talking about people who really don't have any food and how there is help available for them in New York now. Laura, Andre?
Hi, Andre.
How you doing, Laura?
Good. So of a pleasure to meet you. I understand with the food situation in New York that nobody needs to go hungry. It's a big issue, and I know you've had experience. You had shared some stories.
Yes, the way I feel is in New York, there should be nobody hungry. There's pantries every day.
That's right.
There's soup kitchens every day. For anybody that's hungry, they can get a bag of food.
Andre, you're a professional cook. Could you explain to our viewers what is a pantry?
A pantry is when you can go, anybody can go, stand in and get a bag of food, and get some canned goods, and get some rice, cereal, dry milk,
The essentials, the basics.
every basic stuff that you can eat with. Even get bread, they get bread. There's all types of food that they get, fruits, vegetables, fresh vegetables. Soup kitchens, they give you hot food every single day. I was homeless. I stayed in the shelter. I had my daughter. We never went home, even though I didn't have one. I got sick. I always worked, but I got sick. But at a present time, I had to go to a soup kitchen. I had to go to a pantry to feed my daughter, to make sure that she ate. So I feel there's food stamps. You can go get food stamps. They'll give you an address. Say you go, you don't have an address. They'll give you an address just to help you out. They'll give you a $28 emergency check. That day, you stay there all day, but you get a check. So there should be nobody in New York hungry.
So you've got soup kitchens, pantries, and shelters. So that there's a security blanket for everybody in New York. You may not know about it, but it's there.
It's
You
there.
don't have an address. Your address is the post office at 9th Avenue and 34th Street.
390.95.
You're not a person. A person who has no address feels like you're not a person. So that New York has a system. How long has this been in effect that you have homeless shelters, soup kitchens, and pantries?
Been over 20 years.
20 years. But let's say 50 years ago, did that exist?
No, not pantries. But food stamps always. Food stamps you could always get. There was always food stamps, always. But they started the pantry thing after like 80 in the 80s. Still, it's 20 years ago. Early 80s they started pantries, and it's always been soup kitchens. Always.
It's important to keep in mind how recent some of these wonderful changes are. It was only in the 19th century that the child labor laws started to be passed in the United States, and my father tells a story about one legislator when child labor, I think under the age of, or whatever it was banned, said to a girl, "You can go out and play now." And she said, "I don't know how." The things that we take for granted, the good things, and many of them are very recent. It's important to keep in mind just how recent. Laura, you want to say something about what happened when you were 8 years old?
I remember growing up, there were times that my brother and I would go and collect bottles to buy food with. We didn't have food. and we knew what it was like to survive and collect those bottles and have food. So I admire Andre sharing this with the services that I think people are not aware of. Maybe they are, some are, but a majority don't know that there is help out there, that services exist, and we know that it's the economy at bad times now, and I think it's an important thing to know. And the food banks that supply all these services are wonderful. Like you had mentioned a couple of them, City Harvest.
Pantries, soup kitchens, shelters. Now you're talking about a fourth category, a food bank. What's a food bank?
No, a food bank at City Harvest is the one that supplies the pantry with all the food.
They get the donations.
People donate food every day.
Right.
Around the holidays, you get food drives. You got Christmas, you get toys and food drives. There should be a kid that not have a toy on Christmas. There should be a kid that never be hungry. Their parents should never be hungry. There's always something in real. This is the only place that there's always something to do, there's always something to eat, there's always somewhere to go.
It's the hub of the world. There's no place like New York.
There's no place like New York. So if you ever hear somebody say, oh, I don't know, don't believe them. I per se, wouldn't believe them. Because, like I said, I've been there, I've been homeless, I've been on drugs, I done been to a lot of places, a lot of people haven't been. But I can thank God today that I can live here and give this interview.
That's
to give you guys information on things that is available for people. Like everybody, if you get a cut, you can go to the hospital, you can get free Medicaid. There's free services for every single person. There's a budget. People tell you that there's not. There's a budget for everything. They're trying to cut them because people abuse it.
They do.
People that really needs it can't get it because you got people that abuse it. They're not going to tell you because I'm getting everything. You know, even though they should. Like me, I share because I don't want to see you hungry. Well, you know what it went through. You went through collect bottles.
Right.
You still got people collect bottles today. They collect bottles, cans, and they buy cars now. I know somebody who bought a car.
Really?
Or for cans.
Oh my goodness, off of cans?
I want to say something
What a
about
great
abuse.
story.
Andre mentioned that there are people who want to cut social services because there are people who abuse social services. Well, maybe we should cut Wall Street because there are people who have offshore illegal accounts in the Cayman Islands. Maybe we should cut certain university presidents because they spend $1 million on their summer homes in Long Island when 400 girls or more in the university I'm thinking of engage in stripping, prostitution, and escort services as written about by New York papers to help pay the president's salary for his home.
Good point, Lowell.
So maybe there's all sorts of things we should cut. And I don't think that's a reason for cutting services to the poor. Let's start for cutting entitlements to the rich. And I'm one of them. I don't come from a background where I was collecting bottles and cans at the age of 8, like Laura, to get food. Nor was I homeless like Andre. I come from an upper middle class suburban background where I had a car in college, I didn't use it, and I had $200 a month from my dad, and I didn't use the money either. Those things weren't interested to me. I was in my dream world. I just didn't use it. The car sat there, the money sat there. I think I got a haircut once a month from the barber. That was about it. So I didn't know about the worlds that they're talking about, but I also grew up in a home where my dad, who will be 93 in September, was, as he says, a combat lawyer on 149th Street and 3rd Avenue, where the old L was. Andre used to live across from the L, and as my father said, in El Barrio, you have people with, as he said, body odors, and if you don't like people and body odors, so go get a job with a fancy Madison Street law firm, except many of them are collapsing and falling apart. My father was doing pretty well as he watched the smarty pants who looked down on him, even though he was NYU Law Review 1949, as they lost their jobs. They didn't know how to open their own office, and they weren't so smart anymore. So,
he was for the people, Lowell.
He was for the people, Those were his clients. He wasn't doing social work. Those were his clients. He provided a good service, and he fought like hell for them. And many of the judges were the judges, he said, were basically honest. Most of them were Irish. So when a big utility came in and was swindling Mr. and Mrs. Rodriguez, who had just come from Puerto Rico, and the smarty pants lawyer came into the court and said, "Excuse me, Your Honor, it says on page 900 of the contract that they have to pay this and that." Your Honor would say, "Get the hell out of my courtroom. You know perfectly well they can't read and write English, and don't ever show your face here again." So my father said most of the judges were very honest, and they tried to do what was right for the poor, and don't think that big companies wouldn't trample on them too. In fact, in the last few years when I got into the film and art world, I've seen a lot of trampling, and I'm mad as hell about it. We're going to be talking about that in our interview series. Now let's go back to New York. You have 12 million people living in the metropolitan New York area. How many people of the 12 million really need the pantries, soup kitchens, and the homeless shelters? What numbers are we talking about?
If it's 12 million, I would say 1.5.
10% of the population?
10% of the population. Everybody else is, they make money, they go out, they get up, they work, and then you have those that you and me and her, what's your name again? Laura, we pay their taxes. You know, what I learned is you get up and go to work every day and somebody's sitting at home collecting your taxes. You don't like it, but you gotta provide for your family. We can't sit back and say, well, they're not doing it. You gotta keep moving. There's always gonna be somebody or some people that just can't kick it. They're gonna be lazy. You're gonna have that.
Right.
That's any way you go. You can't, how you say, you can't push
Well, they
everybody.
abuse, they ride the system.
They ride the system. That's why the system is messed up.
Right.
Because when I was coming up, you didn't have to work for your welfare check. They make them work for their welfare check. But still, people come up with excuses. Oh, I got kids, I can't find a babysitter. It's still a funny excuse not to go and work. I can't speak English, I can't live, my leg hurt, my shoulder hurt. But you have people that goes out every day. I know a man that gets right up there and keep him for 23 years. Man can't walk. He gets up every single day. He can get SSI. He'll tell you, I can get SSI.
What's SSI? What is that?
Social Security disability for somebody that never worked. You got SSD for people that worked and got disability, are disabled, and they pay their taxes into Social Security and they can draw that. SSI is the person that never worked and has a disability. Now you have some people that choose not to get it, they're going to work. You know, like a gentleman that I know, he's been in the same job 23 years. 23 years. He got bad feet. He walks. When you see him, he walks. Goes to work every day. Gets up and go to work every single day.
That makes him strong.
It makes him, and he has a purpose, exactly. He doesn't want to sit around and wait. You have those that sits and wait, but it messes up for everybody else. For a person like, say, you need it, it's good. They're going to give you a hard time because Laura here just beat the system for so long. And now you actually need it, they're going to give you a hard time. Why? Because they don't believe people anymore. Because they abuse the system. And that's why the system is the way it is now. But you can always get money. The way the system is made up, it's made up for emergency. Say you go and you get it, you get the emergency, then you got to follow up. You don't follow up, you don't get it. But you can get it that one time.
Okay, I want to say something again about abusing the system. We're talking about systems that get abused. When I see that the Security and Exchange Commission stops giving them smack, little smack on the wrist to major criminals on Wall Street and starts putting people in jail for life as they well deserve to be. And they know they're under pressure to do this now because now they're starting the war, the Wall Street firms. No more settlements out of court without admissions of guilt because they realize they're sitting on a social explosion where America's in depression and people see, well, if I steal a candy bar from the store, I go to Rikers Island or someplace. But these fat cats, and that's what they are in Wall Street, can do anything they want, settle out of court, and they even build that into their budgets. When I, for myself, see that kind of abuse stop, which is dealing with billions or hundreds of billions or trillions of dollars worth of abuse. I'll take more seriously comments about the belt tightening and buckling up and bootstrapping with abuse at the lower end of the system. Let's see the abuse stop with the 1%ers before we start talking about stopping abuse for the low end of the 99%ers. Laura, Andre, you want to say some concluding comments to our first interview about shelters and food for who wants it in New York? Do you want to say some concluding comments about that?
For anybody in New York, if you're watching, you can go to any shelter in New York, all 5 boroughs. They've got a list of pantries that's every single day. Every single day there's a soup kitchen that you can eat every single day. You can get a hot meal. It should be nobody in New York. I see it for myself. I've been there. I never went home. Me and my daughter never went home. I didn't have money every day, but we had something to eat every single day. It might not be what I want, but when you're hungry, you're hungry. It's whatever they serve. But the food wasn't bad. The food wasn't bad. So anybody who eat from information, any New York City shelter, any shelter, they'll give you a list about that thing, of where you can go, all 5 boroughs, what time, what place, and you know.
I always wanted to volunteer, like on Thanksgiving.
I do that at a soup kitchen, yes. I do a soup kitchen every Saturday, which this Saturday is a soup kitchen too. My daughter's birthday, but I don't think I'm gonna do it. But I'm the cook. I'm the head cook. I cooked for 13 years. We feed between 200 to 250 people. On an off week, on an off month, like about 50, 150 people. But we do it because it's giving back, and there's always somebody in the need. Always, every day, wherever you go. It doesn't have to be in New York. It doesn't have to be in the United States. Everywhere there's somebody hungry. I don't care where you go. Somebody is hungry. So that's what I do. I feel good about what I do. I give back. I volunteer my services. I do a lot for the community. This 25th, I'm going back to my community to give money and stuff back to the kids who go back to school, to let them know where I've been at and that today I can give back. Everything is free. The kids that have backpacks, pens and stuff, we all chipped in. They grew up in our neighborhood, our own neighborhood, and the people that we grew up with are not there anymore. We have a lot of Hispanics, Africans, all nationalities live in my neighborhood, my own neighborhood. We don't care, you know, we care, but we don't care what nationality they are. We're just giving back to show them that we're from the neighborhood and we came from poor to where we're at now, that we can give back.
Where's your neighborhood?
It's Burnside and Tremont.
Oh, Tremont.
Where? In the Bronx?
It's in the South Bronx.
South Bronx.
It's University Avenue, Tremont. It's August 25th.
Oh, wonderful.
It's from 9 to 6. And there's free giveaways. There's the cancer truck is going to be out there. We got a lot of sponsors. We went out into the neighborhood and we reached out to all the stores and to get free stuff for the kids and for the parents. We have things for the young ladies where they don't have to wear makeup. We show them how to dress with makeup, not to show their stuff, their goodies, I always could say. There's always ways that you can dress and you don't have to show your stuff. And they have a class for that. Makeup, like I said, for all the kids who go back to school.
Life skills.
Life skills, right. Hygiene.
Exactly.
You know, there's things for all the kids to do, parents. Like I said, the breast cancer truck is going to be out there. And we did all of this just, we started out in March.
For this year?
This year. We started out in March. We had a weekend every first Saturday of the month until our event came up. You know, we planned it. And we just, like I said, we just want to show the community that we remember where we came from.
You don't forget what you're talking
Never
about.
do. Some people do that.
Yeah.
I'm not like that. And like I said, I've been on drugs.
Right.
And I can show people that I'm not on drugs today. I work every day. I always worked. But like I said, it's not where you come from, it's what you give back.
That's right.
Yeah, I want to add something, and then I know you can give a concluding comment. What Andre says about remembering.
Yes.
I know there are people who would tell you when bad things happen, move on, especially when they've been the one doing the bad things to you. Well, let's forget about it. Don't ask victims to forget about their abuse. Abusers shouldn't say, well, let's move on. Let's talk about remembering. It says in the Torah, God says to the children of Israel, I am the Lord your God who brought you up out of the land of Egypt. You'll not oppress the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And this is repeated over and over again because how easy it is to forget where we came from, especially when we're looking at other people. We don't want to know where they are. So no, don't move on and don't forget. Remember and don't oppress the stranger. This is absolutely a message directed to the 1%ers in this country. Don't oppress the stranger because you were strangers in the land of Egypt. And remember Marie Antoinette, when it got to the point where she said, well, let them eat cake, and she was in a palace fleeing over the border, but she didn't make it and got her head cut off. She was in her what do you call it, the carriage.
They just did that film.
Which film?
I think it was called Marie Antoinette.
About her.
About her.
You want to make a concluding comment
Sure.
with this so we can say thanks to our
Thank
viewers
you,
for listening
Andre,
and
for
watching.
this.
I have
It
one
was
more
one,
thing.
sure.
One more thing.
We're going to be
that I would
doing
like to
more
say.
interviews, and we're going to be going with Andre to some of those soup kitchens and
I would
love for
pantries
y'all
and
to come.
homeless
We would
shelters.
love
You're going
to
to be
come.
going
That
with
would be
us.
nice, something to look forward to.
I do coaching. Well, I don't coach now because of my health, but I look out for kids. You gotta look out for kids. Kids are our future.
Right.
I used to coach basketball, like swimming with the jerseys.
That's
I
nice.
still go to street ball tournaments, but kids are, you have to keep them out of trouble today because they can go around the wrong path and you have to keep them on the straight path. So you would find things, I would put up money for kids that their parents didn't have money for them to play basketball. So if you are a good kid, you go to school and you do everything you do and your parents can afford it, you just, I would coach them, pay their fare, and they would stay out of trouble. You know, you keep them here, because some of them don't have fathers.
Right,
You
right.
know, a lot of single parents, they work,
Role models.
team scores $75, parents don't have it, put it up, because it keeps them here. You don't want them going here.
Right,
You
keeps
want
them
going,
focused.
exactly. You keep them in school, and then they want to beat somebody. Not saying that all kids don't want to beat somebody,
Right.
but we try to avoid them going down the wrong
Wrong
path.
path.
Because
That's a beautiful
all our
thing.
youth is either in jail or dead.
That's
They
right.
don't make 21.
No.
Not today. Most of my friends, we all meet every year, Old Timers
That's
Day.
beautiful.
We're all in our 40s. We all live
Right.
to see 40,
That's a
maybe
beautiful
50.
thing. That's a blessing.
Kids today don't live to see 21, 18, they're dying. So
Sad.
you have to go in the community. That's what I'm doing, what I'm doing. You go into the community,
Right.
you try to get all the fruits that you can get and let them
That's beautiful.
What Andre just said about kids don't live till 21. Maybe last year, I commuted from Israel to New York now for this show. I went to see a movie in White Plains, and I was at this big multiplex cinema, and went to get some ice cream. And I like to read people's tattoos. So there was a young black guy who was giving me the ice cream. I said, "What does your tattoo mean?" He said, "This tattoo means that I'm still alive at 21. That's the real world for a lot of people.
It's a big thing to them.
And I've been meeting in the last 2 years in the film and art world a lot of people who don't know there's a real world out there, and they should get to know it. We're going to help them get to know it. Or you got a concluding comment?
I just think it's inspirational to do what you do and keep doing it, Andre. I think it's a blessing.
Thank you.
You taught me and I learned a lot in this interview. Thank you.
Yeah, I learned a lot from you too.
Andre, thank you very much, and we thank our viewers for watching
Laura.
and listening until our next interview with Andre.